Mike Norvell's got it rolling pretty well there in Tallahassee on the recruiting path. We got Nate Greer on the line from Knoll Game Day to help us track the 22 class here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Please like the videos, share the videos on social media, because if you like them, others will as well. And of course, subscribe, hit that bell for the notifications. That way you know when we're going live. Nate, appreciate you stopping by to track some of these recent commits. How's it going today?
It's going great. I appreciate you having me on to talk about, Florida State and that momentum they have right now on the recruiting trail.
Absolutely.
Moving in the right direction very quickly for Florida State.
Yep. So before we get into the specific names, what do you think has been the difference for Mike Norvell recently?
I think it's just the time that's been put in with this 2022 class. Even when they arrived last year, they started offering kids in that 22 class and building those relationships. So, the thing that really stands out about this staff is their ability to connect with these recruits. And, they just go after it. They do not let up, and they are in constant contact. So I think, with a year in, with a lot of these kids, they've built that relationship and they built that trust, and they've kind of allowed themselves to prove via relationships that they are a legitimate option and are pieces to the puzzle to help get this program back on track. I
think the relationship factor gets undervalued by most fans. Because we know what the recruiting rankings are. We know what the teams did on the field in the last few seasons. And, of course, it's been a rocky ride for Florida State. Its worst run since the mid-'70s, just prior to Bobby Bowden showing up, and everything changed after that. But they obviously are doing just that and building and selling a culture to a certain extent, and what the possibilities could be. So, Nate, let's go to the most recent commit, if we could. Sam Mccall out of Lakeland, Florida, athlete, top 35 player, according to the 247 Sports Composite, and that's top 35 regardless of position. So he is on top of the charts. He is near the very top.
Yes, he is. I think the people were surprised when he committed, but, when he decommitted from Florida, Florida State was an option, and they've done a really good job even when he was committed to Florida, just still putting in that effort and that work to stay in contact and to let him know that even though he was committed to Florida, they were going to still recruit him. So when you look at Sam Mccall, it's just another versatile piece to the puzzle. Mike Norvell and his staff, they like a lot of versatility with their players. And you look at Sam, he could play wide receiver in college. He played a lot of wide receiver last year. He went for over 900 yards and 10 touchdowns. I believe he played a lot more offense than he did defense as a junior. A lot of people are projecting him as a defensive back, but he can come into Florida State and, play wide receiver and play that well. I do agree with everyone else's projection that he's a defensive back in college. You look at what makes him stand out, top 35 is well deserved. He took 6 feet and growing, has the long arms as a cornerback. He can press you at the line of scrimmage, and he's also athletic enough to play off coverage. He can also play safety and has that range and has those ball skills in order to track the ball and make a play, and he can tackle. He's aggressive. He's just a great athlete. And when you watch him play, it's almost effortless. Kind of like Travis Hunter, who I've been pounding as the best player in the class. He's just a natural football player, and it seems almost effortless when you watch him play. And when you look at the switch to a 4-2-5 that Florida State's doing, in that defensive backfield, he's a guy that brings a lot of position versatility. He can line up inside corner, outside corner, safety, in the box. He can do a lot. So this is a great, great get by Florida State.
Yeah, I was going to take you right from McCall to the top of the board and Travis Hunter. And it brings to mind one of the greatest athletes to ever play the sport, Deion Sanders, of course, in the same colors, both sides of the ball. And do you think Florida State would use a Travis Hunter on both sides of the ball?
This is a fun debate when you talk about Travis Hunter, because he, I think 24/7 finally admitted and nailed it that he could be the number one receiver or the number one cornerback, just whatever he wants to play. He's gifted enough to excel. Me personally, when you look at how things would unfold, I think if God forbid something happens, this is a 3-year and out guy. So when you look at projections and what happens in the NFL and all that kind of stuff, the corners are drafted higher more than wide receivers. But this guy is so gifted. I just don't know how things will go with him. I think he's too good to not play on both sides of the ball, whether that is playing corner and getting 20 snaps at wide receiver, which would be, I think, the right thing to do to get him on the field more. Or, he plays wide receiver. If you watch him play, I mean, he puts up ridiculous stats, and he's just gifted. I think he's one of the best players. Florida State's going to land in quite some time. I think since Derwin came into Florida State, and I think he's one of the best players that Florida State's going to land overall since this dynasty started. I think he's that good.
We've got Nate Greer on the line from Nole Game Day, and we're talking about Florida State's 22 class that is a long way, obviously, from signing on the dotted line starting in December, but right now it's the #1 class in the ACC and the top 10 class in the country with 6 hard commits, including, Nate, you got Nico Marchiol, a quarterback, pro-style quarterback, 13th rated according to the composite, out of Chandler, Arizona, a place where Mike Norvell's gone a few times, out to the near the West Coast to grab players.
Yeah, I think while Florida is important to the success of the program, in long term, this staff has a lot of ties from previous stops, and going out to Arizona, where they had some success getting Chuba Purdy, and now you land Nico Marchiol, who's a 12th rated quarterback in the country, and also in on AJ Duffy, who came in, transferred to IMG. He's from Arizona, so the staff evaluates really well on how things fit, and they're going to go wherever the players are. Florida does have to be the base, is where the best players in the country are. But, when you're looking for that quarterback, when you're looking for that person that is your team leader, you can't restrict yourself to an area, and you got to really go where that player is. And Arizona's had a string in the last few years of having some really good top flight players. It's not necessarily a deep state, but they have a lot of frontline, really good players that come out each year.
So, Nate, when you look at Marchiol on tape, what does his game look like?
He's a lefty, really, really, really good at getting out of the pocket and throwing on the run. He can make all the throws. He doesn't have, a howitzer, really strong arm, but he can make all the throws that you have to make. He has really good accuracy. He's really athletic, which is what I think that this staff likes in their quarterback, with what Dillingham likes to do with the offense, with what Norvell likes to do with the offense. When you look at Purdy, when you look at bringing in Mackenzie Milton, when you look at Nico, and you look at Duffy, they're all guys that can stand in the pocket and throw it, but they're also guys that are really comfortable throwing on the run and being creative with the ball. So he didn't have the best junior year, and I think that kind of put some, rust on his shine a little bit. But I think that, that was his first year at that school, and I expect him to rebound and have a really good senior season. So, he's a really good left-handed quarterback, which Florida State hasn't had, and I don't know when. So, fits the offense, and when this coaching staff is really looking for that guy, they said it when they came on that they like guys that are, winners or smart. They're students of the game. They are natural leaders, and that's what Nico is. So it's a great get for Florida State.
Nate, we love the personnel breakdowns here, and we love to know the rosters and who's where and who's doing what all across the country. So I'm just going to tap your brain for the complete rundown here. Go right down the list. We got Nigel Kelly, 23rd rated strong side defensive end out of Fort Lauderdale.
Had a really strong junior year. There's a lot of people down here in Florida that think he's going to make a run for that top 100, which I don't think is unrealistic. In a shortened year, he had 12 sacks, and he causes havoc, which is what you want from your defensive end. Whether it's getting to the quarterback or in the run game, he's a lot of the guys on this level. He's a really good pass rusher, a really good stop in the run. He's very well-rounded at everything that a DN is asked to do. He's got a great frame. He's 250 and looks like he's 230. He's going to be at least the top 247 guy at the end of his senior year. So Florida State's going to have to hold off a lot of schools, but from what I understand, his family and him are big time FSU fans. So that should help Florida State throughout this whole process.
Welcome in, everyone, to the Voice of College Football. Best discussion, debate, and analysis. That's our aim. That's our goal. That's our mission. Every day we talk college football, even through a long off season with guys like Nate Greer. We encourage you to catch his work over on Knoll Game Day. Of course, Logan Robinson joins us on a regular basis here to talk up FSU. All right, Nate. The University of Arkansas travels to Florida a lot to try to pluck players out of the Sunshine State, but rarely does it happen the other way around. But Quincy McAdoo's a player at wide receiver out of Clarendon, Arkansas. Have you seen his film?
No, I watched a little bit of him. He was one of the first offers that Norvell and his staff made when they came to Florida State. So, they were recruiting him, and he was at Memphis. Quincy's very familiar with that coaching staff. And again, that's where relationships came in. He's one of the top players in Arkansas. It reminds me a lot of Kamari Terry and how he is as a player. He's long, athletic, is a strider, can stretch the field, pretty physical when he wants to block, which is something Kamari Terry did when he wanted to do. He had a lot of success doing that. So I think he fills that role that DeMonte Coxey guy at Memphis that Norvell had. He fits that big body, big play threat. If he was from another state, Texas, Louisiana, Georgia, Florida, I think he'd be getting a little bit more recognition than coming from Arkansas.
Now, a guy
I don't think he deserved a bump down in the rankings. I'm not a big rankings fan, but he got bumped down in the recent update. So I think, he's definitely better than what he's rated right now.
Now, Nate, a guy that when you talk about recognition, I look at the name and I suddenly go to a rival team from about 20 years ago and pluck a name when I look at Aaron Hester. I don't know if there's a connection there, but weak side defensive end out of Neptune Beach, Florida.
Yeah, his dad played at Florida State.
Okay.
So he's one of those legacy recruits that Florida State is looking at over probably the next 4 to 5 years. There's quite a few legacies coming down the pike for Florida State. And Hester is another versatile defensive end. Florida State in the 2021 class did a really good job of addressing that lack of pass rush. And they're reaffirming that in 2022 with Kelly and Hester. Hester's going to be that strong side defensive end, really physical at the point of contact. I think he is got a lot of room to grow as a player. Maybe not as developed yet as a Kelly is, but when you look at what he can do on the next level, he reminds me of a Keir Thomas kind of guy who transferred over from South Carolina. to Florida State this past offseason. So it's just another guy that helps Florida State address that lack of pass rush, which they've had over, pretty much since Burns left.
27th rated at his position, according to the 247 Sports composite. We got Nate Greer on the line talking to Florida State football and most notably the recruiting efforts by Mike Norvell and his staff. They've brought in some top-notch recruits just in the last few weeks. In terms of who we could expect with 6 hard commits, of course, the class is going to be in the 20 to 25 range, something close to that. Nate, who are the big targets that you're tracking right now?
So, right now, I think this is a 20 to 22 tops class in terms of how many people they can take. There's always attrition, and it's going to happen. But when you look at who's out there, the first thing that pops out to me is Kevin Coleman, the wide receiver from St. Louis, Missouri. He is a number 2 at his position, number 15 in the country. He's someone that appreciates Florida State's tradition and history, really mimics Peter Warwick as a player. And that's someone that Florida State has done a really good job recruiting so far. Keep an eye on him. You look at Marvin Jones Jr., another legacy, a weak side defensive end from Fort Lauderdale. Even though he's a legacy and his father was one of the best linebackers in college football history, it's going to be a tough recruitment with him. I think his recruitment is going to mimic, I don't know if you remember Christian Jones from Orlando that came to Florida State. Christian Jones legitimately gave a lot of teams a chance to land him. And I think Marvin Jones is going to do the same. But at the end of the day, I think that FSU will be where he lands. And that is a must get, not only because it's a legacy, but he's just a really, really good football player. I think that he'll be someone that continues to rise up the ratings throughout his senior season. You look at Azure Thomas, he's an athlete from Niceville, Florida. Probably one of the best players in the Panhandle for this cycle. He's probably projected as a safety. That's someone I think Florida State really is tracking pretty hard. AJ Duffy a few minutes ago, he's making a decision here in the next couple of weeks. Florida State wants to take 2 quarterbacks. Personally, I think the kid at Clemson just landed, Cade Klubnik, is the top quarterback on my personal board. I have Duffy number 2. So if Florida State could land AJ Duffy and Nico, that'd be the grand slam for Florida State. Look at defense. You have Wesley Benthays. He's a linebacker from Miami Central. Florida State's really working that relationship real hard. It's going to be tough to get him out of Miami, I think, but Florida State is after him. He's the clear number 1 linebacker on the board at this time. You look at Julian Armella, another legacy. His dad came in as a nose tackle, but moved to offensive line. Enzo Armella, he played under Bowden. Another kid that, Florida State's got to do something on the field this year. If they are a bowl team, go to a bowl game, I think Julian lands at Florida State. If they continue to struggle, I think he goes elsewhere. Jaron Willis, a linebacker from Lee County, I really like him. He is probably the number 1 or 2 linebacker on the board. Really looking at, those traditional SEC schools, Florida, Georgia, Alabama, LSU. But Florida State's in that fight, and they have a pretty solid chance right now at him. One name to really watch out for is Kashan Sapp, also from Lee County, same school as Willis. He's an offensive tackle, and we all know Florida State struggles on the offensive line. But Coach Atkins, who I said last year was the best hire that Norvell made, has done a really, really good job of recruiting Sapp, and I think Florida State is the odds-on favorite to land him, who is, I think he's 350th in the country overall, but he's a 4-star tackle. He's a traditional left tackle that Florida State needs after a guy like Robert Scott, who did really well as a freshman last year. So, the board, in my opinion, there's a lot of really good players out there, but I'm really interested to see how things develop if and when coaches can go out and evaluate. You know, with COVID and all the restrictions, they're not able to really go out and see these kids in person. So I think the board's going to continue to change and will look different in 3 to 4 months.